No, no, stay 6 feet away. You asked! We're 6 feet away! What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? I told you I can't.
Tell her what she's done wrong. What has she done wrong?
Don't take Jesus. Joe! Joe, come in now!
What did she do wrong? What did she do wrong?
Hold on a second. So hear me out. You're welcome to take pictures, but just don't get real tight on the officers' backs. It makes us nervous, okay?
Makes you guys nervous?
Absolutely.
You don't think your intimidation here makes us nervous? So I started coming to Hamilton in January of 2021. I didn't know anybody. I'd heard there was a freedom rally here. I had been to Toronto the day before that when there were about 400 police present to stop a rally that had been going on for over a year without any problems. Numerous people had been tackled in Toronto and ticketed. So I showed up the next day here on the Sunday. I was by myself. I didn't know anybody. I saw 20 or so police officers in bylaw talking to various people, and a handful of people were left here. I didn't realize that a lot of them were back there in handcuffs already. So just to tell you a little bit about that story, I did attend court I was ticketed that day for being 5.5 feet from another person. The police felt it necessary for 6 of them to tackle me, wrestle me, dig in my pockets, pull out my dirty Kleenexes and all that to try to find any identification on me so that they could give me a ticket. And in September of 2021, I attended court by Zoom for that. And I mentioned to the Justice of the Peace and the Crown Prosecutor that I was there for being 5.5 feet from another human being. They kept me in the Zoom all day. I was the very last person that was supposed to speak. And then they dropped my call off the Zoom when I was the last one was about to speak. So I called right away. I said, I'm here. The JP recognized me. And that's when the Crown attorney said, this isn't really in the public interest, so I'm going to withdraw the charges. Well, over a year later, I got a notice in the mail. Just a couple months ago, I got a notice in the mail saying I was to appear in court this March for that ticket. Well over 2 years later, when the statute of limitation for a POA is supposed to be 18 months, and it was already withdrawn. So I called up the prosecution here in Windsor, and he said, who was the prosecutor? I said, I didn't write his name down, but I got the paperwork. It was withdrawn. I can prove that. He said, well, I want to know because if it was the provincial prosecutor, he said, I'm the city prosecutor, so I can bring it back up. Well, I'll tell you, I have been arrested 8 times during the course of this lockdown nonsense, and I've had a day or two in court. And I've met a few lawyers throughout this. I spoke to 3 lawyers, including a provincial prosecutor, who said they have never, ever heard of a charge being brought back up after it's been withdrawn. So why do they want to go after us like this? I don't know. I know that one of the days I was ticketed, I walked back there to my car, and there were people all over wandering around hand in hand, a lovely day like today, the sun shining. And I said to the police officers who had just handed me 3 tickets that day, amounting to close to $3,000, I said, look, go after them. They're outside, and they laughed. But that's how ridiculous it was. So if you were standing here with a sign, or they knew that you were part of a movement to fight against government overreach, then you were the target. I would like to know how many people got EMCPA tickets for anything other than being involved with sharing their voice and their dissatisfaction with the government.
That's right. Us.
How many got tickets?
Me.
We all, many of us here have tickets. So I'll tell you another story. I got a ticket in Stratford, Ontario, and all the speakers at the rally in Stratford were ticketed. I wasn't a speaker, but I was a target. And I got a summons. So the summonses were for amounts up to $100,000. I reviewed all the laws and all that. I attended court by Zoom almost on a monthly basis for 18 months. I represented myself. And then towards the very, near the end, in the fall, I hired a lawyer who was representing another one of the accused. And turns out that she was a prosecutor who had been fired for refusing to take the vaccine. So she was doing this out of generosity of her heart, and I got a really sweet deal. And she said she was going to use the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I said, well, I don't know, Miss Cole. Everybody who I've seen who used the charter, they use Section 1. Section 1 says the government gives you your rights. The government can take your rights if they feel there's a good enough reason. And she said, well, the problem that the other lawyers didn't use the right angle. She says, trust, I've got the right angle. She said, in June of 2021, a few weeks after I had received my summons for being out of my house, Justin Trudeau, Aaron O'Toole, Jagmeet Singh, and Doug Ford and a bunch of others, they gathered 10,000 people in London for a vigil for a family that had been run over. A very sad situation, but we were still in the so-called pandemic. And I attended that in London because I wanted to see for myself. And there were at least 10,000 people shoulder to shoulder. The crowd was so big and so tight that people were passing out from the body heat from the huge crowds. So my lawyer did the charter challenge. She did all the application. It's quite a lengthy process and normally very expensive process, okay? She gave me a sweet deal because she thinks this is bullshit too. So it was all filed. Well, lo and behold, after 18 months of trying to prosecute us, the Crown Attorney in Stratford says, never mind. So I didn't get to make my charter challenge. I didn't get to say that the government does not abide by the same law that they're trying to hold us account to. It's just swept under the rug. Now, my ticket, I mentioned they're trying to bring it back, one that's already been withdrawn. So this lawyer, she's got a new position because I guess the province has dropped the vaccine mandates or whatever. I don't know. So if I were to hire another lawyer to do a charter challenge on the same premise that the government didn't follow their own guidelines, and that would put the justice system into disrepute because it's not supposed to be one law for me and one law for thee.
That's right.
If I were to hire another lawyer now and try that, I would be looking at, $10,000, $20,000 to do that, unless I can find another benevolent lawyer. So the other thing I wanted to say is I see within the freedom movement oftentimes, there's discord, there's disagreement. And I would like to say that it's my opinion we have to try to avoid that at all costs. We're never going to agree with one another 100%. I love the Canadian Bill of Rights, as my friend Jason has talked about. I've studied the Canadian Bill of Rights. I think it's a wonderful piece of legislation. I know that many of the freedom fighters have tried to use it in court, and the Crown attorneys would say, you can't use it, it's provincial. But anyways, we should continue to try. It's better if we have our different kind of angles to try to fight this, what I call global communism, this tyranny that we're under. And I don't think the fight is over because maybe COVID for now is gone, but, you know, the digital ID is coming, the digital currency, you know, they want your biometrics in order to get a passport. They want your biometrics to get on an airplane soon. And we know from the example of China what kind of society that will turn into. So our fight is bigger than COVID lockdowns. Our fight is against global communism and the WEF and the likes of those people who are not elected. So about the infighting and all that, I really would hope that we could try as much as we can to avoid that, because I'm not going to agree 100% with anybody here. And nobody's going to agree with what I have to say 100%. I'm not a $20 bill. I don't expect that everybody is going to like me, like everybody likes a $20 bill.
Temporarily.
But let's try to get along. Let's try to keep the dialogue open. Let's try to work together.
Well said.
Thank you.
Amen.
Is it possible everybody's in the same boat where they're given the ticket or whatever it is, right? And they're fighting the same thing. Is it possible for a whole bunch of people to be considered as a group and together, because they're using the same argument? Why can't all those things be considered collectively in court?
No, that doesn't work. However, I will tell you, a class action lawsuit is completely different than fighting an offense in court. Now, Stratford tried to keep the 12 of us all together, and they did. But one by one, they got people to acquiesce, and something else I didn't mention in Stratford, I said, Your Honor, can you tell me what the maximum penalty for this summons is for being out of my house when during the stay-at-home order? And he said, yeah, it's unlimited. And then they cut my mic in the Zoom, which they like to do in court in Zoom, and I think that's egregious. However, the next month I was back, I said, Your Honor, last month you said that the penalty for being out of my house during a stay-at-home order is unlimited. Does that include life in prison? And he went to the Crown, what's the maximum penalty? So the Crown said, well, the maximum penalty is $100,000. I'm like, okay. They offered us to plead guilty to pay $880. And some people just said, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I can't be bothered with I was literally in court every month for 18 months, so 18 appearances. And stress, that's pretty stressful. I didn't hire a lawyer in the beginning. That's pretty stressful. So I said, can you narrow it down between $881 and $100,000? Like, can you please just narrow it down a little bit? No, we don't have to. Okay. So no, you can't. Although they kept us all together, then a few of us tried the charter challenge. Some people just pled guilty, paid the $880. And then in the very end, after, I could have paid a lawyer $20,000 to make that charter application. And then the court just says, never mind. But now here in Hamilton, they one day say it's withdrawn, and then the next day they said, we're bringing you back. We're bringing it back, because I'm a different prosecutor. I can bring it back. So
what about the fact that due process after 18 months?
Yeah. So I'm told by a Rebel News lawyer that you can apply for that, but that's another charter challenge, I'm told. So a judge may just say, a judge might just throw it out, say, it's
can a lawyer not represent a whole group of people and make one?
No, that would be that's a totally different process of law.
Why can't they all make a charter challenge? It's the same challenge.
The charter is not working, my friend, except maybe this lawyer may have had something where she was pointing out the fact that Trudeau, Doug Ford, Jagmeet Singh, O'Toole, they didn't follow their own rules, and they gathered 10,000 people. Now, given in June of 2021, there wasn't a stay-at-home order, but there were gathering limits. I had a friend who lost a 10-year-old child during COVID, and you know what she said after the funeral? She said, Thank God he died when we were allowed to have more than 10 people at the funeral.
Sick. Can I just speak about church? Thank you so much, Kim.
wants to come up then.
That was profound. Yeah, Kim's gone through a hell of a lot.
Life is never perfect, but if you're open to the signs, the magic in the moment, life is only mine. Never stop loving and treating people kind. One day the world will set me free and I'll be